The first notes of "At Last" floated through the elegantly decorated hall as Maya Bennett closed her eyes and surrendered to the music. Her voice, rich and soulful, caressed each word with the reverence it deserved. The wedding guests fell silent, captivated by the raw emotion she poured into every phrase. This wasn't just another gig for her. Singing at her cousin Ellie's wedding meant everything, and Maya had promised to make it unforgettable. Standing at the back of the reception hall, Ethan Blackwood found himself frozen in place. He had arrived late, cursing the emergency board meeting that had delayed him, expecting to slip unnoticed into his seat as the best man's plus one. Instead, he remained rooted near the entrance, briefcase still in hand, utterly transfixed by the woman on stage. Her emerald green dress shimmered under the soft lighting, her dark curls cascading down her shoulders. But it was her voice, somehow both powerful and vulnerable, that rendered him speechless. "Who is she?" he whispered to himself, the question lost in the swell of the music. As Maya opened her eyes during the final chorus, she briefly locked gazes with a tall figure standing at the back of the room. Something in his intense stare made her heart skip, but she quickly refocused on the newlyweds sharing their first dance. This was their moment, and she wouldn't let anything distract her from giving them the perfect soundtrack to their perfect day. The applause that followed was thunderous. Maya smiled, bowing slightly before speaking into the microphone. "To Ellie and James, may your love story be even more beautiful than the songs that celebrate it." She raised her champagne glass in a toast, and the guests followed suit, the collective cheer warming her heart. Stepping off the small stage, Maya was immediately enveloped in her cousin's emotional embrace. "Maya, that was beyond perfect," Ellie whispered, tears glistening in her eyes. "You made our first dance magical." "Anything for you, Elle," Maya replied, squeezing her cousin's hands. "Now go enjoy your wedding. I've got a few more songs later, but right now, this celebration is all yours." As Ellie returned to her new husband's side, Maya slipped through the crowd toward the bar, desperate for a glass of water to soothe her vocal cords. The reception was in full swing now, with guests mingling, and the hired DJ taking over between her sets. She had a 30-minute break before she needed to perform again. "Your voice is extraordinary." The deep voice from behind her sent an unexpected shiver down Maya's spine. She turned to find herself looking up into the face of the man she'd noticed earlier, tall, with sharp features softened by warm brown eyes, dressed in an impeccably tailored charcoal suit that screamed wealth and authority. "Thank you," she replied, accepting her water from the bartender. "Are you a friend of Ellie's or James?" "Neither, actually. I'm Ethan Blackwood, Ryan's plus one." He gestured toward the best man, who was currently giving an animated toast. "Though I'm beginning to think I owe him a significant favor for dragging me here tonight." Maya raised an eyebrow, a smile tugging at her lips. "Does attending weddings rank below dental surgery on your list of preferred activities, Mr. Blackwood?" He laughed, the sound genuine and rich. "Usually, yes, but I'm rapidly revising that opinion." His eyes never left hers as he spoke, and Maya felt a flutter of something unfamiliar in her chest. "I'm Maya Bennett, the bride's cousin and designated wedding singer," she said, extending her hand. "The talent clearly runs in the family," he replied, his larger hand enveloping hers. The brief contact sent an inexplicable warmth through her fingers. "Do you perform professionally?" Maya hesitated before answering. "Yes and no. I teach music at an elementary school, but I sing at events on weekends. It keeps me connected to performing while I pay the bills." Something flickered in Ethan's eyes, surprise, perhaps, or curiosity. "That's unexpected. With a voice like yours, I'd have thought you'd be headlining venues across the country." The comment stung slightly, though she knew he hadn't meant it to. How many times had she heard variations of the same sentiment? How many people had questioned her choices, not understanding that for every dream of stardom, there were practical realities to consider. "Not everyone wants the spotlight, Mr. Blackwood," she replied, her tone cooler than before. Some of us find fulfillment in different ways. Seeing a child's face light up when they master their first song can be more rewarding than any stadium applause. Ethan studied her for a moment, his expression unreadable. I apologize. I didn't mean to imply your choices were wrong. Just that your talent is remarkable. The sincerity in his voice diffused her defensiveness. No offense taken. I'm used to people wondering why I'm not pursuing fame and fortune. She offered a small smile. What about you? What do you do when you're not being dragged to weddings? Grateful for the shift in conversation, Maya nodded. It does. Weekdays with rambunctious third graders, weekends with wedding parties and corporate events. Not much downtime. Yet you clearly love it, he noted. Your entire being transforms when you sing. It's what? She prompted when he didn't finish. Mesmerizing, he said simply. As though we're witnessing something intimate and personal. It makes everyone in the room feel like you're singing directly to them. The unexpected insight into her performance style left Maya momentarily speechless. Most people complimented her voice or song choice, not the emotional connection she strived to create. That's the highest compliment you could give me, she finally replied, her voice soft. Music should be a conversation, not a monologue. Even when I'm on stage, and they're in the audience, I want people to feel included in that exchange. I run a company, he answered vaguely. Maya waited for him to elaborate, but he merely sipped his champagne, watching her with those intense eyes that seemed to see beyond her careful composure. Something about his deliberately casual response piqued her interest. Most men she met couldn't wait to talk about their accomplishments. That's specific, she teased. Let me guess, it's either something incredibly boring or wildly illegal. The corner of his mouth lifted. Blackwood Enterprises. We specialize in sustainable technology and green energy solutions. Maya's eyes widened slightly. Even she recognized the name of the multi-billion-dollar corporation that had been making headlines for its innovative approach to environmental challenges. You're that Blackwood. As in, CEO Ethan Blackwood. Guilty as charged, he admitted, looking almost apologetic. I find if I lead with that, conversations tend to take a predictable turn. Let me guess, suddenly everyone has a brilliant startup idea they want you to fund, Maya suggested, finding herself inexplicably charmed by his reluctance to flaunt his status. Or they start calculating my net worth, he added dryly. Either way, it rarely leads to getting to know someone beyond superficial impressions. Maya nodded, understanding perfectly. Well, for what it's worth, Mr. CEO, I have neither business propositions nor interest in your bank account. I'm just killing time until my next set. In that case, Ethan said, setting down his glass, would you like to kill time by dancing with me? The question caught her off guard. On stage, Maya felt confident, protected by the music and the distance between her and the audience. On a dance floor, with this man's hand potentially at her waist, that protective barrier would vanish. I'm usually the one providing the music, not dancing to it, she hedged. There's a first time for everything, he countered, extending his hand. The DJ had shifted to a slower song, Frank Sinatra's The Way You Look Tonight, one of her favorites. Something in his steady gaze made her place her water on the bar and accept his outstretched hand. One dance, Mr. Blackwood. I have a reputation to maintain. As what? The cousin who refuses to have fun at weddings, he asked, leading her toward the dance floor. As the professional who doesn't get distracted by handsome men in expensive suits, she retorted before she could stop herself. His smile widened at her inadvertent compliment. So you think I'm handsome? I think you know exactly what you look like, Maya replied, rolling her eyes even as heat crept into her cheeks. When they reached the dance floor, Ethan turned to face her, placing one hand lightly on her waist while the other held hers. Even through the fabric of her dress, his touch sent a current of awareness through her body. Maya rested her free hand on his shoulder, feeling the solid strength beneath the fine material of his suit. "For someone who doesn't usually dance, you move quite well," he observed as they began to sway to the music. "Years of choir and musical theater," she explained. "Stage presence requires knowing how to move your body." The moment the words left her mouth, she regretted their unintentional suggestiveness. Ethan's eyes darkened slightly, but his voice remained casual. "I imagine it takes tremendous discipline, balancing teaching with performing." "Like a shared secret," Ethan murmured, his hand pressing slightly more firmly against her waist as he guided her through a gentle turn. "Exactly." Maya looked up at him with new appreciation. "Not many people understand that." "Perhaps because not many performers achieve it," he countered. "What you do is rare, Miss Bennett." The sincerity in his voice created a warmth that spread through her chest. For a man who presumably spent his days in boardrooms making multi-million-dollar decisions, he possessed a surprising capacity for nuance. The song was ending, but neither of them immediately moved apart. Standing this close, Maya could detect the subtle scent of his cologne, something woodsy and expensive, but not overwhelming. His eyes, which she had initially thought were simply brown, revealed flecks of amber in the reception hall's soft lighting. "Ms. Bennett, 5 minutes until your next set." The wedding coordinator's voice broke the spell between them. "I should go," Maya said, stepping back from Ethan's embrace with reluctance that surprised her. "Duty calls." "Of course," he replied, releasing her, but not immediately moving away. "May I buy you a drink after your performance, to continue our conversation?" Maya hesitated. Everything about this man, his confidence, his wealth, his intensity, represented complications she didn't need in her carefully structured life. Yet something about the way he looked at her, as though genuinely fascinated by what she might say next, made her nod. "1 drink," she agreed. "As long as you promise not to offer me a recording contract or some other cliché discovery moment. I'm perfectly happy with my life as it is." A smile played at the corners of his mouth. "No discoveries, no contracts. Just conversation." "Then I'll see you after my set, Mr. Blackwood." "Ethan," he corrected. "If we're having drinks, I think we can dispense with formalities." "Ethan," she repeated, testing the name on her tongue before turning to head backstage. She could feel his eyes following her until she disappeared from view. For the first time in years, Maya felt nervous before a performance. Standing in the small makeshift green room, she checked her reflection, unnecessarily adjusting her curls and touching up her lipstick. What was wrong with her? She had performed at hundreds of events, many far more prestigious than her cousin's wedding. Yet her heart was racing, and not because of stage fright. "Get it together, Bennett," she muttered to herself. "He's just a man. An absurdly successful, unfairly attractive man who happens to appreciate music." The coordinator knocked again. "Ready when you are, Miss Bennett." Taking a deep breath, Maya centered herself the way she always did before singing, closing her eyes, finding her core, connecting with the emotion of the music to come. This performance wasn't about Ethan Blackwood or his unsettling effect on her composure. It was about celebrating Ellie and James's love. Everything else could wait. When she stepped back onto the stage, her professionalism had returned in full force. She delivered a soulful rendition of "Can't Help Falling in Love," followed by a more upbeat medley of classic love songs that had the dance floor filled with swaying couples. Throughout it all, she was acutely aware of Ethan watching from the sidelines, his gaze a tangible presence even when she wasn't looking in his direction. As her set concluded and the DJ took over once more, Maya accepted the enthusiastic applause with a gracious smile. Several guests approached to compliment her as she made her way through the crowd, and she took time with each one, thanking them sincerely despite her growing anticipation about rejoining Ethan. She found him waiting at a quiet corner table, 2 glasses before him. As she approached, he stood, an old-fashioned courtesy that nonetheless made her smile. "That was extraordinary," he said as she sat opposite him. "Particularly Etta James. You made it entirely your own while honoring the original." "You know your music," Maya observed, impressed by his specific knowledge. She accepted the glass he slid toward her, sparkling water with lime, rather than alcohol. How did you know? You mentioned needing to protect your voice earlier, Ethan explained. I assumed hydration would be a priority. The thoughtfulness of the gesture touched her more than an expensive cocktail would have. Thank you. Most people don't think about the practical aspects of performing. I've worked with enough creative professionals to understand that talent requires maintenance, he replied. Though I admit, my knowledge usually applies to designers and engineers rather than singers. And what exactly does Blackwood Enterprises do with these designers and engineers? Maya asked, genuinely curious. I know the basics from the news, but I'd rather hear it from you. Something changed in Ethan's expression, a subtle lightening, as though her interest in his work rather than his wealth had unlocked a different part of him. For the next 20 minutes, he described projects his company was developing. Solar technologies for regions with limited infrastructure, water purification systems that could be deployed in disaster areas, sustainable building materials that reduced environmental impact without sacrificing quality. What struck Maya most wasn't just the innovations themselves, but the passion with which he described their potential impact. This wasn't a man simply interested in profits or expanding his empire. He genuinely believed in creating meaningful change. That's not what I expected, she admitted when he finished describing a particularly promising initiative to bring clean energy to underserved communities. What did you expect? He asked, looking both amused and curious. Maya shrugged. The usual corporate priorities: maximizing shareholder value, aggressive growth strategies, acquiring competitors. The kind of heartless capitalism that makes for good movie villains. Ethan laughed, the sound unexpectedly boyish from such a composed man. I assure you, those elements exist in my world too. But they're means to an end, not the end itself. What's the point of accumulating resources if you don't use them to solve real problems? Says the man in the $1,000 suit, she teased, though there was no malice in her tone. 1,500, actually, he corrected with a self-deprecating smile. A necessary evil when meeting with investors who equate appearance with competence, but I'd much rather be in jeans in a lab with our R&D team. The image of this polished executive in casual wear, excited about innovation, was strangely appealing. Maya found herself wondering what other contradictions lay beneath his carefully maintained exterior. Your turn, Ethan said, leaning forward slightly. Tell me about these third graders who get to experience your musical talent every day. The genuine interest in his question made Maya's usual defenses against discussing her teaching career, so often viewed as a fallback rather than a calling, dissolve completely. She described her classroom at Oak Ridge Elementary, the challenges of engaging children from diverse backgrounds, and the moments of breakthrough that made every frustration worthwhile. Last month, I had a student, Zach, who's been struggling all year. Single mom working multiple jobs, unstable housing situation, the kind of circumstances that make focusing on music seem trivial, she explained, warming to her subject. But I discovered he has perfect pitch, a rare gift. We've been working on piano after school, and watching him realize he has this extraordinary ability, seeing how it's transforming his sense of self-worth. She shook her head, emotion making her voice catch. No stadium applause could compare to that. Ethan was watching her with an expression she couldn't quite decipher, something between admiration and wonder. You found your purpose, he said quietly. That's rarer than talent, in my experience. Their conversation flowed easily from there, moving from careers to favorite books, travel experiences to embarrassing childhood stories. Maya couldn't remember the last time she connected so quickly with someone, especially a man whose life appeared so different from her own. Yet, despite their disparate worlds, there was an undercurrent of mutual understanding that made the hours pass unnoticed. It wasn't until the coordinator approached again that Maya realized how late it had grown. We're starting to wind down, Ms. Bennett. The bride and groom will be departing in about 30 minutes. They've requested one final song from you before they leave. "Of course," Maya replied, suddenly aware that she and Ethan had been talking for nearly 2 hours. The reception was noticeably thinning out, with only the most dedicated revelers still on the dance floor. "I should let you prepare," Ethan said, standing as she did. "Will you still be here afterward?" The question escaped before she could consider its implications. He held her gaze, something unspoken passing between them. "If you'd like me to be." "I would," she admitted, surprising herself with her candor. As Maya made her way backstage once more, she tried to identify exactly what it was about Ethan Blackwood that had her so intrigued. Yes, he was successful and undeniably attractive, but she'd met handsome, wealthy men before without this sense of connection. Perhaps it was the way he listened, truly listened, to her thoughts and experiences with the same intensity he might give to a crucial business negotiation. Or maybe it was the glimpses of the man beneath the CEO persona, thoughtful, passionate about making a difference, surprisingly unassuming about his own accomplishments. For her final performance, Maya had planned a rendition of "Make You Feel My Love," a song that perfectly captured the tender commitment of newlyweds. But as she took her position at the microphone, a different choice came to her, one that reflected the unexpected emotions of the evening. "Ellie and James, before you begin your journey as husband and wife, I want to share one last song," she said softly into the microphone. "It's about those rare moments when we meet someone who sees us, truly sees us, and how that connection can change everything." As the opening notes of "Falling Slowly" filled the room, Maya's eyes found Ethan at the back of the hall. The raw vulnerability of the lyrics, about taking chances, about the possibility inherent in new beginnings, felt suddenly, intensely personal. She sang with all the emotion that had been building throughout the evening, letting the music express what she wasn't ready to articulate even to herself. When the final notes faded, there wasn't just applause, but a palpable feeling of collective emotion in the room. Ellie and James approached the stage, both wiping away tears, to embrace her. "That was the perfect ending," Ellie whispered. "Thank you for making our day so special." "I love you both," Maya replied, hugging them tightly. "Now go start your happily ever after." After the newlyweds' departure amidst a shower of eco-friendly confetti, the remaining guests began to disperse. Maya helped the band pack up their equipment, thanked the coordinator, and finally allowed herself to look for Ethan. A momentary panic seized her when she didn't immediately spot him. Had he left after all? Looking for someone. She turned to find him standing nearby, coat draped over one arm, expression warm. "Just making sure you hadn't escaped while I was busy," she said lightly, though her racing heart belied her casual tone. "I promised I'd stay," he reminded her. "Besides, I couldn't leave without hearing your final performance. That was different from your earlier songs." "Different how?" she asked, curious about his perception. Ethan considered for a moment. "More personal, almost confessional." His eyes searched hers. Was I imagining that? Maya felt exposed, as though he'd seen through her carefully constructed performance persona to the emotions beneath. "Music often reveals what we're feeling before we're fully aware of it ourselves," she said carefully. "And what were you feeling, Maya?" The directness of his question, combined with the intensity of his gaze, made prevarication impossible. "Possibility," she admitted softly. "Which is unsettling for someone who generally prefers certainty." Understanding dawned in his eyes. "I'm familiar with that preference myself. My entire career has been built on calculated risks, never leaps of faith." "And yet," she prompted, sensing there was more. "And yet sometimes the most worthwhile endeavors begin with uncertainty," he finished, taking a step closer. "Would it be presumptuous to ask for your number? I'd like to continue this conversation when we're both not due in different places tomorrow morning." Maya hesitated only briefly. Everything about this situation, meeting someone so unexpectedly, feeling such an immediate connection, contradicted her usually methodical approach to relationships. But something about Ethan made her want to embrace that uncertainty rather than retreat from it. "Not presumptuous at all," she replied, taking out her phone. They exchanged numbers, the simple act charged with unspoken expectations. As they walked together toward the exit, Ethan placed his hand lightly on the small of her back, a gesture both protective and possessive that sent a shiver of awareness through her. Outside, the October night was cool but not uncomfortable. Stars glittered above, unusually visible despite the city lights. Ethan's driver was waiting with a sleek black car, but he made no immediate move to leave. "Where are you headed?" he asked. "Back to my apartment in Brooklyn," Maya replied. "I've got an early morning tomorrow, Sunday brunch performance, at the Wellington Hotel. Another gig so soon after this one. You weren't kidding about your schedule." "The musical hustle never stops," she said with a smile. "Besides, I genuinely enjoy it." Ethan checked his watch, an understated but undoubtedly expensive timepiece. "It's late. Let me give you a ride home." Maya shook her head. "That's not necessary. I can grab a cab or an Uber." At this hour, in that dress, he gestured to her evening gown, which, while stunning, was hardly practical for navigating public transportation or waiting on street corners. "Please, it would make me feel better knowing you got home safely." Part of her wanted to assert her independence, to insist she'd been managing just fine in New York City long before he appeared. But another part, the part still buzzing from their conversation and the lingering effects of his proximity, recognized the sincerity of his concern. "All right," she conceded, "but just to Brooklyn. No detours to show me the view from your penthouse or whatever other smooth moves you might have planned." Ethan laughed, a genuine sound that crinkled the corners of his eyes. "No smooth moves tonight, Ms. Bennett. Just transportation services." His driver opened the door for them, and Maya slid into the luxurious interior of the vehicle. The leather seats were butter soft, the temperature perfectly regulated against the autumn chill. Ethan joined her, leaving a respectful distance between them as he gave the driver her address. As they pulled away from the venue, Maya felt a curious mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. The performance had drained her physically, as it always did, but her conversation with Ethan had energized her mind in a way she hadn't experienced in years. "Thank you for the ride," she said, breaking the comfortable silence that had settled between them. "And for the conversation earlier. It's been an unexpected evening." "In a good way, I hope." Ethan's question carried a hint of vulnerability that touched her. "Definitely good," she confirmed, meeting his gaze. "Unexpected but good." He smiled, the expression softening his strong features. "I feel the same way. When Ryan invited me to this wedding, I nearly declined. Emergency board meetings, quarterly projections due Monday. The usual excuses." "What changed your mind?" Maya asked. "Honestly, I'm not sure. Something just told me I should go." He shook his head slightly, as if puzzled by his own decision. "I don't usually listen to such impulses. The driven CEO doesn't strike me as a man guided by whims," she agreed. "I'm not. At least I haven't been until tonight." His eyes held hers. "But I'm extremely glad I made an exception in this case." The car slowed as they approached her building, a modest but well-maintained brownstone in Park Slope. Maya felt a sudden reluctance to end the evening, despite her early call time tomorrow. "This is me," she said unnecessarily as the car came to a stop. Ethan nodded, making no move to exit the vehicle. "I'll call you tomorrow, if that's all right. After your brunch performance." "I'd like that," she replied, meaning it completely. The driver opened her door, and Maya stepped out onto the sidewalk. Ethan followed, walking her the short distance to her building's entrance. "Thank you again for the ride," she said, suddenly shy under the soft glow of the street lamps. "And for being such attentive audience." "The pleasure was entirely mine," he replied, his voice low and warm in the quiet night. "Good night, Maya." She hesitated for just a moment, then impulsively rose on her tiptoes to press a soft kiss to his cheek. "Good night, Ethan." The surprised pleasure in his eyes as she pulled away made her heart skip. Without waiting for his response, she turned and entered her building, the warmth of their brief contact lingering on her lips all the way up to her apartment. Sunday morning dawned bright and clear, but Maya hardly noticed the perfect autumn weather as she hurried through her preparations for the brunch performance. She had slept fitfully, her dreams filled with a certain pair of amber-flecked eyes and the phantom sensation of a hand at the small of her back. "This is ridiculous," she muttered to herself as she packed her music into her bag. "You've had one conversation with the man. One. This isn't a Hallmark movie." Yet she couldn't deny the current of anticipation running through her at the thought of his promised call later that day. It had been a long time since anyone had affected her this way, perhaps because it had been even longer since she'd allowed them to. The brunch performance went smoothly, her repertoire of jazz standards and acoustic covers of contemporary songs creating the perfect ambience for the upscale hotel restaurant. But while her voice remained flawless, her mind kept wandering to the previous night. Several times she had to force herself to focus, to stay present with the music rather than replaying moments of her conversation with Ethan. When her set concluded shortly after 2 o'clock, Maya checked her phone immediately. No missed calls, no messages. A twinge of disappointment surprised her with its intensity. She reminded herself that he was a CEO of a major corporation. Surely he had other commitments on a Sunday afternoon besides calling a wedding singer he'd just met. She was halfway home when her phone finally rang, an unknown number lighting up the screen. Her heart jumped embarrassingly as she answered. "Hello. Maya? It's Ethan Blackwood." His voice, even through the phone, sent a pleasant shiver down her spine. "Is this a good time?" "Hi," she replied, hoping she didn't sound as eager as she felt. "Yes, it's fine. I just finished at the Wellington, and I'm heading home." "How was the performance?" "Good. Standard brunch crowd, more interested in their mimosas than the music, but that's expected." "Their loss," he said, the smile evident in his voice. "Listen, I'm calling because I'd like to see you again. Properly. Dinner, perhaps." Maya hesitated, though not because she didn't want to accept. "When were you thinking?" "My schedule is pretty packed this week." "I understand busy schedules all too well," Ethan assured her. "What about Wednesday evening? I know a place in the West Village that's quiet enough for conversation." 7 o'clock. Wednesday was her one free night that week. Maya briefly considered inventing a conflict, giving herself more time to process the intensity of her attraction to this man, but found she didn't want to delay seeing him again. "Wednesday works," she agreed. "Excellent. I'll text you the address." There was a pause then. "I've been thinking about our conversation all day." The simple admission made her smile. "Me too, actually." "I'm glad it wasn't just me," he said softly. "I look forward to continuing it on Wednesday." After they disconnected, Maya stood on the sidewalk for a moment, foam still clutched in her hand, a ridiculous grin spreading across her face. What was happening to her? She was 32 years old, not some starry-eyed teenager experiencing her first crush. Yet here she was, practically floating because an attractive man had asked her to dinner. But Ethan wasn't just any attractive man, a voice in her head pointed out. There had been something different about their connection, an ease, a mutual recognition that transcended the usual getting-to-know-you pleasantries. For someone as guarded as Maya had become over the years, that immediate sense of understanding was both thrilling and terrifying. The next few days passed in a blur of classes, lesson planning, and the mundane tasks of daily life. Ethan texted her once, just a simple message confirming the restaurant details and saying he was looking forward to seeing her. Maya appreciated his restraint. In her experience, men either bombarded her with messages or disappeared completely between dates. His measured approach suggested confidence without arrogance. Wednesday evening found her standing before her closet, discarding outfit after outfit with uncharacteristic indecision. The restaurant he'd chosen was upscale, but not ostentatious, a place known for its exceptional food rather than as a C and B scene establishment. She finally settled on a deep blue wrap dress that flattered her curves without being obvious about it, paired with modest heels and simple gold jewelry. As her rideshare approached the restaurant, Maya felt a flutter of nerves in her stomach. What if their connection had been a fluke, the result of wedding emotions, good champagne, and a heightened atmosphere of celebration? What if in the cold light of a regular Wednesday, they found they had nothing to say to each other? Her worries dissolved the moment she stepped inside and saw him waiting near the hostess stand. Ethan was dressed less formally than at the wedding. Dark jeans and a steel blue button-down that made his eyes appear even warmer, but no less striking. When he spotted her, his expression transformed from polite patience to genuine pleasure, and something in her chest tightened at the realization that he was just as affected by seeing her again as she was by seeing him. "Maya," he said, stepping forward to greet her. "You look beautiful." "Thank you," she replied, suddenly shy despite having performed for thousands of strangers throughout her career. "You clean up pretty well yourself." He smiled at that, then guided her toward their table with that same light touch at the small of her back that had haunted her thoughts since the wedding. The restaurant was intimate without being cramped, its decor understated elegance rather than showy luxury. Their table was tucked into a corner that offered privacy without isolation, perfect for conversation. After they were seated and had ordered drinks, a crisp white wine for her, sparkling water for him, Ethan leaned forward slightly. "I have a confession to make," he said, his expression serious enough to cause a momentary flutter of concern. "That sounds ominous," Maya replied, trying to keep her tone light. "Nothing terrible, I assure you." He hesitated, then continued. "I looked you up after the wedding. I found some videos of your performances online." Maya relaxed slightly. "That's hardly scandalous in the age of Google. What did you think?" "I think you're even more talented than I realized at the wedding," he said simply. "There was a video of you performing at some charity event last year, Bridge Over Troubled Water. It was extraordinary." She remembered that performance, a fundraiser for a local children's hospital where one of her former students was being treated. The song had carried special significance that night. "Thank you," she said softly. "That particular event meant a lot to me." "It showed," Ethan replied. "Which brings me to a question I've been wondering about since we met. Why teaching? With your talent, you could be recording, touring, building a significant career as a performer." It was a question Maya had answered countless times, yet something about the way Ethan asked it, more curious than judgmental, made her consider her response more carefully than usual. "I love performing," she began, tracing the stem of her wine glass with one finger. "The connection with an audience, the way music can transform a moment. There's nothing quite like it. But the lifestyle that comes with pursuing it seriously, the constant travel, the pressure to build a brand, the inevitable compromise of artistic integrity for commercial appeal." She shook her head. "That held no appeal for me." Ethan nodded, his expression thoughtful. "And teaching offered an alternative." "Teaching offered purpose," Maya corrected gently. "Every day, I get to share my passion for music with children who might otherwise never experience it. In a system where arts education is constantly under threat, I can be the person who shows them that music isn't a luxury. It's a fundamental form of human expression that belongs to everyone, not just those who can afford private lessons." She paused, suddenly aware of how passionate she must sound. "Sorry. Educational equity is a bit of a soapbox topic for me." "Don't apologize," Ethan said, his eyes never leaving hers. "It's refreshing to meet someone who's made deliberate choices about their life, rather than simply following prescribed paths to success," says the CEO of a major